Hey, so I really need help with my pop-up. I'd love any suggestions or advice you may have. Basically, I'm having trouble getting my front leg through and I'm getting blocked like this. I can do the pop-up really well on the yoga mat at home, but then when I'm on a board, I end up like this. So I'll share some more details here as to why I think that's happening, but I'd love any thoughts you might have. So I've been surfing for 8 years, on and off. Took a 2-year gap there, but 8 years, and surf every day now. And can ride shortboards and do turns and stuff, but did a video review session with a coach, and I thought we were going to talk about turns, and he's like, mate, your pop-up is shit. So I've been trying to improve it, and I've been struggling. And so here's me on the right, there's John on the left, what it should look like. Yeah, and ultimately, there's a lot of different waves where I end up like this. Like, I've been filming a lot of my sessions with the solo shot, and unfortunately, it's just like, what the hell is that? What is that? What is that? What is that, So these are all these different waves. And so, yeah, if you actually saw me surfing, you'd probably be like, oh, that guy can surf, and you wouldn't notice this pop-up problem just looking at a wave like that. But the issue is that my coach was pointing out is that it really messes up the beginning of the wave. So basically I arch, I pop those hips up, and then I try to get the legs through, and then I get stuck, and then I end up in this weird deadlift position. So this does a few things. Number one, it gets me hung up on the lip, which sucks because I missed the best part of the wave. I spend the best part of the wave doing a deadlift to get out of that position, which throws me off balance. But actually the worst part is that you can see how far back here's where the line where my hands are. You can see how far back my front foot is. It's like way back on the board. So I end up way back on the board in this feeble, narrow stance. And it's like every single wave is like that. So, yeah, I started looking at shots of me doing this, and here's an interesting sequence actually that I took of just one wave. So what the hell is that? Why are my knees pointed outwards, And because when I looked at all the pro surfers, they're not doing that, why is that happening? So I looked at Steph and John and Tyler Wright, and sure enough, their knees are always together. Their knees are always together, relatively together, knees together. These are all different waves. John knees together, knees together, knees together, which makes sense because you got to bring it through your arms, right? Tyler, same thing, she's shorter and whatever, and she's able to do it too. So I'm like, interesting, my knees aren't together. So I actually tried it with one wave later, and it actually went pretty well. You can see I pop, and then my knees are together, and then I'm able to get into a relatively decent stance. So I started researching this, and I went and looked at Kale Brock. He has a video on it where he talks about this exact issue, where when the back foot lands first, it locks off the hips, and then you end up in a forward-facing ski position instead of opening up to the direction of the travel of the wave. And that's what I look like, right? And these locked hips restrict the amount of space beneath the torso for them to swing their leading leg through and onto the surfboard. So this is just one of those bad habits that I think I developed surfing without lessons for those 7 years or whatever. And he said the solution is to focus on the front leg and to get on the front leg first, because that'll automatically rotate your hips. The back hip will swing around, and then you end up in this nice position. He's actually not technically perfect. His foot should actually be right in the middle of his hands. And it's actually behind this hand, but it's good enough to work, a lot better than how I'm doing it. And then he gives some more examples of that, And I do have one example on video where that actually worked out. And it's this one, just a whitewash guy, where I was practicing the pop-ups on a mid-length or longboard. Pretty humbling going back to the whitewater, by the way, but I need to fix this to become a much better surfer. So, boom, there it is. So what's different? Well, I was thinking, keep my knees together. Did a relatively good job of that, right? And then I was thinking, bring my right knee up to my right armpit, and I didn't get that far across. It's still on the left side, but it didn't hit my left arm like it usually does. So then I got my foot farther through, and it's behind my hands, but not by much. And the most important thing here, I think, is that besides keeping those knees together to avoid that is much healthier than, Bowman, wherever he is there, Jesus Christ. And then I drop my butt, which is, seems to be how people do it. I also caught this guy at the end of the session in my camera who just popped up really smoothly. And I just want to look at him quickly, because this is what I'd like to be able to do. Yeah, smooth, right? Head up, the whole thing. So I think the only difference here is that he's rotating his body earlier in the direction of travel to help aid his front foot coming through. He's starting with the front foot first. Actually, it looks like it's about the same time, but his legs are a little wide, but he does get that foot through pretty well. It's behind his front hand. It should technically be in the middle, but whatever, that's good enough. And then he drops his butt. That's the other thing, he drops his butt. So anyway, knowing this, I have a surf coach who's really well accomplished and who's a pro surfer himself. And, he's been showing me examples of how to do this. And he keeps his knees together until there, basically, until he's under his navel, Whereas I, on the yoga mat, even though I can do this pretty comfortably, it's not really... I'm still kind of spreading my legs really early, right off the bat, spreading my knees. And that was a better one, that's a much better one than I dropped my butt. That's actually one of the best ones in this video. But the one before is yeah. So again, what the hell is this motion, right? Why are my legs apart there? So that's fairly interesting. So why is this happening? And why is it that I'm able to do a pop-up on the dry land when that's supposed to be harder? And what I think it is I think it's the fact that when I'm on the board, I actually have my knees out like that. You can see back there. I've got my knees kind of stuck out like that. And so I start like that. And then, when I go to arch and then pop, I end up kind of like that. And then my left knee that I'm trying to bring through actually hits the backside of my armpit. So, anyway, when I can do this pretty well, a lot of the time, on land. So I'm not sure why I can't do it on a board, that's pretty awesome there. That would be good enough, So why is it that on a board I get stuck fucking this in this weird yoga crow pose? So if you have, exercises I could do on the yoga mat, or anybody can recommend any specific movements or cues for when you're popping up to remember what to do to get your hips rotated, to get your knee through, and to keep your knees together and stuff, I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. It's been so frustrating. Any help you could offer would be appreciated.